As we're experiencing some tumultuous weather patterns in much of the midwestern corn belt, which we'll call northern Kansas, Nebraska, northern Missouri, Iowa, South Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, there's that debate between the haves and the have-nots. You're on the ground with Rob Seco. And the haves and the have-nots. Am I glad I have seed in the ground today, or am I glad I don't have seed in the ground today? So the definition of the haves or have-nots depends on which side of that fence you may or may not be on. So, but just let's think about, there is some risky weather right now with both corn and soybeans in the ground, because we're going to have some extremely low temperatures experienced in different latitudes, and that's a latitude from that Missouri-Iowa border, which will have low temperatures down to about 30, all the way up to that Minnesota-Iowa border, which can get down to the low to mid-20s, and so there is some concern there. And that all has to do with what is temperature going to get to at seed depth, because frankly that's still where your growing point is. But let's just think about the planting window for corn and what window can give you optimum performance for corn on your farm. Different than soybeans. Soybeans is a much shorter window, and that could be 7 or 8 days in any given geographical range. But corn can be 21 to 24 days, where you still have the opportunity to gain 100% potential on your farm. And let's break that down into 3 different windows. So the early, mid, and the late, whether that be a 7-day period in each or an 8-day period in each, you get to performance in a different pattern with each of those windows. So take the early or the ultra early window, and it's going to be more risky type of conditions. You're going to have more fluctuation in air temperatures, more fluctuation in soil temperature. So you're going to be a cooler pattern, more risk, longer time in the ground. You'll have a lower seed to seedling ratio. Your established stand could be 1 or 2 or even 3,000 fewer plants per acre. Right? So there's concern number 1. Concern number 2 is the uniformity or lack of uniformity in emergence in that early window. And remember, a 2-day separation in emergence, one plant to the next, can be up to 100 kernels on an ear that'll put on 680 to 700 kernels on that plant that came up late. But at the same time, early planting dates give you a more strong physiological plant, a plant that doesn't stretch out the internodes so much. You have more stability in stock quality. You have greater root mass, or the potential to grow greater root mass, because you have a longer growing season, and you have a longer grain fill period, giving you the opportunity to give you deeper kernel, and a deeper kernel is a big function of yield. So that's the early window. Middle window, you should have a higher seed to seeding ratio. You should have a greater number of emerged or established plants. Your uniformity plant to plant to plant should increase as well. Now, you're going to have a taller plant. You're going to have longer internodes that will stretch, internodes that if they stretch the diameter of them, then become a little more risky. So you'll have a taller plant, you'll have a less robust physical plant, even though it is taller, and you'll have a little bit shorter grain fill period. Right? But your ability to compete with the early planting date is the fact that you have more plants per acre and you have greater uniformity. Now that last window of planting date could come up in 4, 5, or 6 days. Okay? So your ratio of seed to seedling should be as high as possible. So your established number of plants should trump the middle and the early planting window, if that makes sense. At the same time, your plant will stretch out a little farther because it's competing plant to plant to plant for sunlight. It recognizes the sun, recognizes the day length, and so you will have a smaller or minimal diameter of stalk. As those internodes stretch, it'll simply be taller. At the same time, you will also have a shorter grain fill period. But to make up for that shorter grain fill period and some of the risk of the physical plant, you'll have more established plants per acre or more ears per acre, and you have greater uniformity plant to plant to plant. So what I'm saying is, it's not a matter of haves or have-nots. The window of opportunity to reach 100% potential on your farm is there for a great period of time, 3 weeks to 21 to 24 days. It's still all about conditions. All about conditions when you deliver your seed into your soil. You've been on the ground with Rob Seco. I'm Todd Claussen.